Welcome to the Smart Driving Cars podcast. Thanks for joining us. This edition is sponsored by the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF, symbol MOTO. For more information, head to motoetf.com. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University, Alain Kornhauser. Hi, Alain.
Hi, good morning, Fred.
And we are very happy to have with us former Deputy Assistant U.S. Transportation Secretary for Research and Technology, Diana Furchtgott Roth. Thank you for taking the time to be with us, Diana.
Great to be with you.
Diana, it's such a treat to have you with us. Good morning.
Well, good morning, Alan. I have such good memories of coming to your Smart Drive conference. I just can't wait for it to be in person again.
Well, we're getting you involved, okay? Yes, absolutely. And we're trying to do it this year with over Zoom, over many sessions. Next year, we're going to be back in Princeton, and we can get back to normalcy. I mean, we have... Never mind. We won't go there.
Well, as you know, I have 6 children who've graduated from Princeton. It's one of my favorite campuses.
It better be. Otherwise, I mean, Jesus, you contributed enough. Oh, my goodness. I didn't realize. Yes, we are. Thank you. Yes.
Well, Diana, for the audience here, you're an economist, author, senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, and have served in a variety of government positions.
The Manhattan Institute, that was where I was before I was Deputy Assistant Secretary for Research and Technology. I'm now a professor at George Washington University, an adjunct professor in the Applied Economics MA program.
So happy to have you on the academic side of the wall now. We'll have a lot of fun together.
I'm going to be teaching transportation economics. And so I'm just getting my course together, and I'm going to make them read all your posts and also...
Don't do that. No. You'll scare... What? No, go ahead. Yes, very nice.
Politics being what they've been in Washington, the Senate never really did act on your confirmation in the last administration, yet you went ahead, did your job fully. Let's talk about some of the key issues you faced in trying to advance new technologies for mobility and autonomous vehicles.
Right. Well, first of all, the career staff at the Office of Research and Technology is really terrific. They're the most professional career staff I have ever worked with, and I've worked at 3 cabinet agencies, and they did so much to advance the technology and to work on these issues. So first of all, kudos to them. We faced several technical issues, one of them with the 5.9 band. As you may know, 75 megahertz had been set aside by Congress for intelligent transportation systems and connected vehicles. And Alain, I know that you have qualms about the possibility of connected vehicles, but the intelligent transportations component is up and working and deployed in many, many cities. The problem was that the FCC wanted to take away 45 megahertz of that 75 megahertz. And towards the end, they actually put out a draft rule and order to do just that. But it has not yet been published in the Federal Register. So it might not, in fact, take place. We'll have to keep watching for that. The problem is that if our companies do not have that allocated spectrum, then they can't develop different types of technology, whether it's connected vehicles, whether it's automated vehicles. And it's very important that they have the wherewithal to do that. For example, your iPhone, all these different generations of iPhones, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm on number 6 plus myself. But they wouldn't be able to work if there wasn't spectrum for them to go over. And that's why it's important to keep the US competitive advantage. Other countries have put aside 70 or 75 megahertz in that same 5.9 band. So if a car, for example, with connected vehicle or intelligent transportation system technology would drive from Canada through the United States to Mexico, it would be sad if the technology worked in Canada and Mexico, but it did not work in the United States. That's the kind of thing we're up against.
Interesting. What are some of the other issues that you had to tackle in this position over the
Well,
over the
oddly
4
enough,
years?
and I would never have guessed this coming into my job, that so much time would be taken with the spectrum that our companies could be using to operate their technology. So another one was GPS. There's a company called Legato that wanted to expand out of its space. It had space basically to operate in space. It was able to use the spectrum in space, and it wanted a modification for terrestrial use, which would have interfered with GPS, the global positioning system, which is a bit like a whisper. And if there's a large noise, then it crowds out that whisper. And the Department of Transportation is the lead agency for civilian GPS. DoD is the agency for military GPS, and DOT is the agency for civilian GPS, and that office is under me. So we spent a tremendous amount of time on this Legato issue, giving classified briefings to the commissioners, showing them why this would interfere with GPS. So we have about 80 to 120 million car navigation systems that would have been affected, Garmin watches, precision agriculture, construction, digital construction, where you get a GPS note for where to put a nail rather than just using a blueprint, for example. This would have been tremendously expensive. And this is still up in the air. This is still something for the next FCC to deal with. The entire executive branch filed a petition for reconsideration against the FCC to stop Legato moving into the space, which would have affected GPS. But the FCC did not back down. So that took a lot of time also. Plus there was work on GPS.
So on that one, let me, if I may, jump in. Although this is, of course, I have an opinion on that one too. I couldn't support you more. Okay, I consider myself a pioneer in the using of GPS for transportation. I like to say I put the first nationwide GPS turn-by-turn navigation system on the market in August 1997, before anybody would ever. I was out there on May 1st, 2000, I believe it was, when Clinton signed the executive order to basically improve the quality of GPS by an order of magnitude, just by signing a pen, but by signing a document. I'm out there driving around. I recall in Boston, Massachusetts, and all of a sudden, just I mean, the accuracy of the map matching that you have to do in that process. And I absolutely know about interference of that very, very, very scant signal that one gets. I mean, the beauty of it is it's everywhere, but the problem with it is that the signal is very, very weak for whatever purposes, whatever. That's just what we have. And of course, the intrusion from anything, such that from any noise, the signal noise ratio gets to be too low, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Mercedes puts this film on their windshield so that it can sense rain hitting it. Okay, so it automatically turns on my windshield wipers. Thank you, Mercedes. But guess what? It keeps this, it reduces the signal strength of the GPS signal coming into it. So if I want to use Copilot inside my car, I can't. Okay, it has to have the antenna outside, and I have to use Mercedes's version as opposed to my version. Drives me nuts. But it is so darn important. And as you mentioned, it is now everywhere, especially in precision construction. I mean, Trimble's out there, doing that stuff, worldwide precision, and it depends it. So that one, that both of them have to be protected, whether or not we're all going to be connected sooner or later, whatever, to drive around is a whole other story, but those spectrums have to be protected, not only for transportation, but for all of these other applications. And I can't support you more on that one.
You actually issued a report, the department did, it was earlier this month, right, to Congress on this.
Right, yes. So aside from the Legato matter, where, as I said, it was unprecedented, it's never happened before that the entire executive branch filed a petition with the FCC to back off on this. We were also looking, by another order of Congress, we were looking at how to back up GPS, even if we didn't have the Legato situation. What if there was an electromagnetic storm or a military attack that took out our satellites? GPS, very few people know, is based on our satellite system. And Congress had asked us to look at a backup in case the satellites went down. So last year, we looked at 11 different technologies. The companies came and tested them, did a dry run in February. We tested them in March. We wrote up this long report that was published shortly before we left, that's on the website at the Transportation Department. It was sent to Congress earlier this month, and it compares these different technologies and how they can be used to back up GPS. So the next step is for funding for these technologies, either private funding or government funding, so that we have some backup in case there's a problem with the satellites. So that took a lot of time also. My smartest decision at DOT was when my staff came to me and said, well, we're doing this project and it's going to be done. The tests are going to be finished in December 2020. I said, what? December 2020? That is no time to be finishing anything. What can we do to get it finished earlier? So we did testing in parallel tracks, and the testing was finished, in fact, in June 2020. We revamped the schedule. And of course, it took us 6 months to write the report, get it through all the clearance processes at DOT, the White House, at the executive branch agencies, and still it was published a few days before I left office.
Congratulations on that. No, really, I mean, protecting GPS, we have become so dependent on it. I mean, so much of our lives is really, I like to think of it as, is it maybe the military's the best thing that's done for the civilian society? I mean, you look at how something that was supposed to have a military application, certainly valuable for the military, certainly they can pay for it. All of a sudden, I mean, we as individual citizens benefit from this, so enormously. So yeah, it's.
This is something that has bipartisan support. This is not a partisan issue.
No, absolutely. This is a people thing.
I mean, Maria Cantwell, who's, I believe, going to be the new chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee, she was fully in favor of this. And many Democrats
Sure.
and Republicans on Capitol Hill, they're all joined together about the importance of this. Now, how much money Congress should put towards it, that's, of course, another question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there may be enough private sector benefit for all of this, and private sector security. And the last thing the private sector wants is uncertainty. And so the backups are good for everybody. Okay.
Well, we found that the financial sector has put in place a backup. So banks have put in backups. They're not so much interested in the location. They're very interested in the timing. In other words, whether you do a transaction at 4 or 4:05 p.m. matters a lot to banks. So they have put in place backup. But the rest of the industry hasn't. There's no backup for Trimble. There's no backup for John Deere with its tractors that do precision agriculture. So you can have a seed in one place and fertilizer in that same place and water in that same place, rather than just throwing seeds and fertilizer and water over a very large area. That doesn't have a backup. The car navigation systems, the Garmin watches, they don't have a backup. So it's interesting to see where the backups have developed in the private sector.
Yeah, and of course, you mentioned, in case someone of our audience don't realize it, GPS is all about timing. It is really timing, because that's in a sense how you get your position. But timing is, I mean, there are atomic clocks up there. That's what they do. That's really what they do. Okay. And broadcast the timing signal.
Really interesting. So among some of the other, if you take a look at the broad picture of the autonomous vehicle industry, lots of progress made over the last 4 years. Of course, the pandemic maybe slowed things down with some companies, and with others, maybe not so much. What's your assessment of where this industry is today, and in your thinking about the future, where this is leading?
Well, usually I listen to Alain's podcast to see where the industry is today, but we tried to make more regulatory certainty within the department, publishing publications such as AB 3.0, 4.0, to see if we could give more regulatory clarity so that these industries would be developing on their own. So that was our efforts, rather than to try to micromanage where the industry was going to go. We did put out a University Transportation Center grant for the University of Pittsburgh to develop more accessibility in automated vehicles. And we hope that that's going to be a success. I'm going to be watching that very carefully as it goes forward. But I think the major advantages, the major improvements are going to be in the private sector, and the job of the government is just to put very clear safety rules, performance-based rules, so that these can develop on their own. And we see them developing with shuttles during the pandemic. There's some delivery vehicles. So it's going to be really interesting to see where that goes. If anything, I think the pandemic has accelerated the demand for certain kinds of automation rather than held it back.
And it may have also accelerated the development too, as I've talked to a number of folks out there. You know, much of the industry is involved in writing code. Okay, I mean, it really is the intelligence that really taking the data, understanding the data better that you collect, and then doing the right thing, and doing the right thing every 30th of a second all the time. And that's largely code. There is a certain amount of testing that needs to be out there. There's a certain amount of testing that needs to be with Mother Nature and so on. But the simulation tools have all advanced. They've gotten a lot better. One can progress a lot farther down there. One can do a lot more in terms of scenario analyses and all those kinds of things. So, and it's sort of got people off their back, I guess, to get things out there more. Yes, in one sense, more quickly, but maybe not more quickly, but certainly more carefully. And for the most part, everybody's been out there very, very careful. There haven't been loose cannons on the deck out there, whatever, and the other cliches that we use to describe those. You right? I have the right perspective on the thing, or what do you think?
Definitely, the Department of Transportation is very, very professional, very bipartisan. Some of the smartest folks I've ever worked with, they've worked in this industry their whole careers.
Yeah, it is, and I think people are, mobility is really important, and of course mobility for those that really need it, could use it the most. What are we doing this for? Improvement of quality of life, right? I mean, I hope that's what we're doing it for. There's no other reason, and quality of life for everybody, or those folks that need it the most. I think that's my simple view on it.
Right. And it's interesting to see what vehicles people have been buying over the past year after the pandemic. A substantial share have been SUVs and these large vehicles. And it's interesting that the new administration is pivoting to more incentives for electric vehicles. They want to get people into smaller vehicles rather than the larger vehicles that people have been purchasing since the beginning of the pandemic. And it'll be interesting to see how that turns out, whether the incentives are going to result in an increase in the share of electric vehicles. There've been about 120 million, I believe. You know the figures better than I do. But about Yeah. So anyway, so it's
Let me ask you a hard question there. I mean, a question that we're trying to address. Yes, in some sense, maybe electric vehicles should be promoted. It's a deeper discussion than there was an article in New York Times yesterday and so on, whatever. But there's a deeper discussion. But what about vehicles that don't crash? Okay, because that's the key to safety. And why isn't there an incentive to do that? A couple of, really, these are tough questions. One is safety is the most important thing that that's the real reason why DOT exists, is make sure that things are out there flying safe, on the water safe, on the road safe. I mean, number one, right? Okay. If these things
subject to the travel that people want to do,
subject to the travel, of course, I mean, in the end, it's quality of life. You got to be supporting that. I mean, right. Of course, that's the driver.
To make people completely safe, they would just all stay home.
Well, of course, that's why it's an asymptotic thing. It's something we strive for. Okay, it's of course something we strive for. But here with this technology is focused on. We've done a lot with respect to crash mitigation, marvelously with respect to crash mitigation. This deals with crash avoidance, not having it at all. Okay, all right. Why, for example, not to throw out a name, Subaru Eyesight, which is essentially on, really is focused on keeping cars from crashing. Why isn't that promoted by government incentive? Why isn't cars that are really not going to crash being promoted with a X $1,000 whatever, like electric vehicles? In a sense, certainly the climate and where we live is an objective, okay? But certainly safety is an objective. Why don't we put money behind that? I mean, real money in terms of, $5,000 off on your car or taxes, whatever's been put on. Any thoughts on that one, or is that too weird?
Passes these tax incentives, not the Department of Transportation. The Department of Transportation, NHTSA,
sure,
National Highway Transportation,
sure.
And they have a program called NCAP,
Right.
which gives certain stars depending on certain features, but that's very limited. If Congress were to have a program with tax incentives, for example, for an automatic braking system, then that might really jumpstart things. To go back to Spectrum and the 5.9 band, there are technologies, and Continental has one that fit on basically traffic lights. So if that gizmo can see two cars coming towards each other and about to hit each other, these cars are out of line of sight, so they do not see each other. Then this device gives a warning to both drivers. So the connected vehicle effort, the whole impetus of that was safety.
Sure.
That's why the department was fighting so hard to keep that 75 megahertz for the safety band. And these technologies are available. They could be deployed. They could work on either DSRC or CV2X. And cars could be able to talk to each other through what's called a bridge, a bit like a translator. So if you speak Mandarin and someone else speaks English, it would translate. So there's a lot of opportunities for safety, which the government could do by preserving this 75 megahertz and allowing companies to use it. Toyota was going to roll out the devices in its cars in 2018, and you got a letter from a couple of FCC commissioners saying, "Don't do this. We're going to take away the ban." So there is a lot of potential. Toyota's looking at deploying in Japan. Volkswagen is looking at deploying in Europe. All these things would increase traffic safety. And right now, our government is just standing in the way of that. But tax incentives would be something that Congress could pass. And it looks like they have a massive stimulus package. And a few little tax incentives for automatic braking systems would just be a drop in the bucket of what they're considering right now.
What advice would you have, Diana, for the new administration and people who are going to be filling these positions? As you mentioned before, a lot of people that you worked with are career people, and their work continues on. But what advice would you give? Stay out of the way.
No. My advice would be to, well, first of all, I want to congratulate my successor, Robert Hampshire, who has a PhD from Princeton in engineering. So I'm sure he's very well known to all.
In Orphe too, operations research and financial engineering. Of course, great. Yes, thank you.
He is very, very well qualified. I'm sure he's going to do a wonderful job overseeing the research and technology. And I believe he's already started. So my congratulations to him.
Mine too.
And I think the next administration, as you say, should focus on safety. Also looking at what people want to drive, where people want to go, making it easier for them to purchase the vehicles they want to drive, rather than forcing them into smaller vehicles with smaller ranges, and maybe focusing the electric efforts on things like delivery vehicles, shuttle buses that find it easy to charge up overnight. And we also need to look at, if we're interested in global climate change, if we're interested in emissions, how much difference is electricity going to make to global climate change? These batteries have to be produced, they have to be shipped. The electricity to run them has to be generated somewhere. If we don't use nuclear power, that causes emissions. So we need to take a long, hard look as to what we want to do and the best way of doing it. We're all interested in a cleaner environment. But gasoline-powered cars have been getting more and more efficient over the past decades, and they do a pretty good job too.
Diana, what you mentioned there is really very, very important. We need the energy, and the question is not only what is it, where did it come from? What did it take to make it? The interesting thing about transportation is you need energy as you're moving. So therefore, you need to get that energy, carry it with you. Okay. So one of the nice things about petroleum is that we put it in a tank. What's it cost to make the tank? Almost nothing. What's it take environmentally to make the tank? Almost nothing. What's the weight of the tank? Almost nothing. The fuel weighs some, but the tank doesn't combine. Then you look at batteries. Okay, we still have to make some substantial improvements in that mobile carrying that gas tank. A battery's a gas tank because it moves with you and allows you to have the energy when you need it, where you need it. Okay, and the improvement in that thing, it barely has moved since 1837 or whatever. We have been moving recently, which is a really great news. I think some news out of China recently said that, at least from them, the costs there, who knows how it's subsidized, blah, 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 and all the details, but has basically gone down an order of magnitude in a year, in 10 years. Okay. That's beginning to be the kinds of things we've seen in the computing industry with Moore's law. It's a Moore's law on that. If we could get the Moore's law on batteries, then it's almost a no-brainer. Okay. Plus, we can make them bigger. We can get the range with all the other things, that come with it. The battery is really important. The other is, where in the heck's the energy come from? Right now, marginal energy is generated by coal. So in fact, when you transfer a gallon of gasoline for whatever kilowatt hours of energy you need, that's a marginal increase in the demand of energy, of electricity. How does that marginal increase get generated? Coal. Yipes. So if we can go to nuclear, right? Go with the go.
And we're getting more natural gas, so that's taking over from the coal.
Yeah, of course it is. But
that's still,
but that eats into what we already use, right?
Yeah. We also need to think about the geopolitical aspects of it.
Yeah.
A lot of components in our electric car supply chain come from China. China has a lot of the materials it produces the batteries. And we need to think about how dependent do we want to be on China for our transportation supply. Whereas a lot of the components for gasoline-powered vehicles are right here in the United States, and we're generating the oil and we have the refineries. That's another important component.
Yeah, and then the other comments that have been made in this by others on our podcast is, where does the skateboard then come from that now moves us around here? Is it all like the Lime scooters that are, that flooded us, or the electric bikes that flooded us, and so on, boom, and I don't even want to go near that when I'm just not. It's not a slam dunk yet. The electric vehicle is, I guess, our point here, and I think it takes some continued deep thought on this thing.
Well, yeah, I think that there are 120,000 electric vehicles sold in 2019, and of those, about 90,000 were Teslas.
Yeah,
that's really interesting, also. And as you say, Tesla has a particular marketing strategy, as you said.
And Tesla's a damn. Yeah. Yeah, of course, and it's a nice vehicle and so on and whatever, and yes, absolutely. Sure, great. Elon's great. Elon's hitting it out of the park. Seems like in every time he gets up to bat or whatever. Wonderful. That's good competition. I think that's good for the economy, but it's not a slam dunk that we necessarily yet should be all the way over there.
Seems like the whole industry is moving in that direction, but we'll be back with more. But first, this is a good time to remind you about our sponsor, the Smart ETFs, Smart Transportation and Technology ETF, symbol MOTO. To get more info, head to motoetf.com. On the website, look for the white paper called the Smart Transportation Revolution. It's under the Insights and News tab. Lots of great information to help you make informed decisions about investing. ETFs, you may know, can be a smart way to spread risk with your investments and focus on a particular category. The site, once again, is motoetf.com. We're back, and some headlines to touch on this week from the Smart Driving Cars newsletter. As we've been talking about, I guess, to some extent, we go from the previous administration to the new one, where Pete Buttigieg is likely to be confirmed as Transportation Secretary, and he's pledged support for President Biden's $2 trillion infrastructure rebuilding plan. Alan, and you've already mentioned some of the people who are going to be working in the department, appointees, Robert Hampshire and Vin White.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that I sort of pointed out, I just think that the Department of Transportation over the past 4 years did a darn great job. I think we're in really pretty darn good shape. And you just look at, I went through the list of executive orders or whatever that are about to be signed or were signed. And I think there were only like 3 things at Department of Transportation that were being in some sense turned around or whatever, whereas in some other sectors of the economy, there are a lot more. I just think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful that look, all this technology, we don't know what we don't know, and we need to admit that. And we need to be careful, and we need to, as the previous administration did, it provided, let's find out. Yes, there's a risk. Everything's a risk. Life's a risk. My goodness, it'd be boring if if life wasn't a risk. Risk is actually good in some sense when you get right down to it. Uncertainty is good. You know the future, you don't want to live it. Okay, I mean, it's nice that it's uncertain. So in a sense, I think it's good, and hopefully this administration, and I think it will continue that. We just have to learn a lot more, and we should. And there was good discussion. There was great discussion with the previous administration, and we can continue to go on good discussion. And most of these things aren't partisan. They're just trying to provide quality of life improvements to people. And that's really what they're focused on, and let's just focus on that. And I think we'll be fine. And I think at least the two people that I know very well in the administration, I think they'll be great. And again, Robert, what a great follow up with you. I mean, it just wonderful.
Right, and his group Umtree has just done really great work up in Michigan. There's really terrific research up there.
Yeah.
One thing, Alan, that is disturbing, and you kind of were talking about it before in the conversation with Diana, preliminary data for the first 9 months of last year from NHTSA shows an alarming increase in traffic fatalities during the period. And I'm saying you talked about it before, promoting, why not incentivize the safety tech? But I'm not sure that it's the safety tech that's the issue here. What's going
Yeah,
on?
no, I'll say that it is. I don't know if Diana, but not that Diana is an academic. Maybe she can say that it is, but yeah, the alarming number is the deaths per vehicle miles traveled. That's the alarming number. That's that's kind of the rate measure, and we can sort of hypothesize, look over, see how we've behaved, how our neighbors behaved, what we've sensed, and all that, more texting, more whatever, more less congestion out there. Therefore, people are going fast, people are going nuts, their brains, or who knows what. They're the pandemic has been bad in many directions. Okay, but darn it, we really are very close to having technology that we can put in vehicles. The reason I keep saying, the reason the 90% of crashes that have human involved in them are because we misbehave. If we text, it's misbehaving. If we look over here and check something out, it's misbehaving. If we fall asleep, it's misbehaving. If we have too many adult beverages, it's misbehaving. If we go way too fast, it's misbehaving. If we're tailgating, it's misbehaving. And we have enough intelligence to not only have the sensors look out to what's happening, but also look in to the person without invading privacy and say, maybe, hey, cool it. Or maybe, we're not going to let you do that. Or we'll take the toy away from you if you misbehave. Or something like that. We have the capability of doing it without taking away all your rights.
There are two reasons that fatalities increased, potential reasons they increased during the pandemic. First of all, it could be that the existing people on the road were driving faster because of the lack of congestion. Or it could be that the more risk-averse people were staying inside, as they were told to do during the pandemic. And it was just the riskier people, the risk-loving people that were out
misbehaving. Don't call them risk loving. They're misbehaving. Darn it! I'll be outlandish on this one. Go ahead.
People who decided, well, they could go see their friends and they could go to the grocery store rather than staying inside or having their groceries delivered. You can call them whatever they like, whatever you like. But anyway, it could be a different group of people on the road. So that's possibility number two. But anyway, whatever it is, we do have the technologies. We do have the technologies to slow people down. And in fact, these NHTSA driving messages that come around Labor Day or Memorial Day, don't drive drunk, ticket or click it or ticket, something like that. What I've suggested to them is, rather than having these banners, why don't we just have more police cars out there, or even a fake police car with its lights on? More of these fake police cars, because that really makes people slow down. They see a police car, makes them slow down. So rather than the messages, let's put some dummy police vehicles out there, as well as all the technologies that you're talking about. Because the technologies would go in the new vehicles, and there's still a big pipeline of old vehicles, like my 2004 Jeep that still has to get off.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, all those, absolutely. But really, we do have, and I think we should start where it's easy for us, start putting them in the new cars, have the manufacturers want to put them in there. because in the sense, sometimes it's good. I like being whacked every once in a while and put me back in straight and narrow, because otherwise, I kind of go off the deep end. And so we need to be we're only human. We're only trying to, live our lives. Help us out. Okay. Don't ask us to be absolutely perfect. Okay. When we're not perfect, help us out. Give us a get out of jail free card. Okay. If you give us that, and then, we might not, we'll say thank you. I'm texting. It keeps me from, I didn't want to text. All right. I had a good excuse or whatever. It shouldn't matter. Okay. If it saves my butt, I'm going to be thankful. Why not put it in there to save me? Okay. Do it for, I don't know. That's just throwing that out there for discussion's sake. I don't know. What do I know?
Well, it's a good point, and Diana made a great point as well, that with all of the older vehicles out there, that she's driving one, I'm driving one too. It's going to take a long time for this technology to really be pervasive.
Or how maybe to put some research and development money on how to do retrofit devices that go in there and are very inexpensive and people might do. And if they aren't going to buy it, maybe give it to them as a gift if they buy this or that, or I don't know. Defining the problem is always the toughest part. Once you define the problem, we can find solution. If that's the problem, let's fix it.
There are 37,000 deaths on the road every year.
Yeah.
And what concerns me is that policymakers just they seem to take this for granted. I mean, here, every COVID death is a tragedy, and there are articles written about COVID victims, and that death is indeed a tragedy, but also so are the 37,000 deaths on the road, and plus the about 1.2, 1.5 million injuries that can change people's lives and change the lives of families. And people are opting for more safe technology. There are, in fact, retrofit kits that you can put on vehicles. And maybe something needs to be done in terms of a tax incentive, or maybe just more publicity. And as it takes off, then the cost of retrofitting is going to go down as more people purchase these kits and more people purchase this equipment.
Yeah, and you make the very good point. The 1.5 million serious accidents that change people's lives. I mean, in one sense, almost, I hate to say it, once you're dead, okay, you move, these things that last, 40 years, that may be a bigger thing to focus on than, well, it's.
Did Twitter delete your account? What happened, Alan?
I am so bad with technology. My laptop ran out of power and it wasn't plugged in. I just got this notice that the plug. You may have seen me looking around my computer. I'm looking for the plug before I got a chance to plug it in. It killed me. I hate technology.
These electric vehicles somewhere in the middle of New Hampshire, where it's telling you got to find a charging station. So.
No, I mean, look, of course.
With your computer, you can just plug it in. With your electric vehicle in the middle of nowhere, you have a big problem.
Look, that's tough. That's really tough.
Alan, Microsoft is investing in Cruise, GM's driverless car unit. An interesting move there. And I'm envisioning, being a tech reporter, another battle between Apple and Microsoft on the roads.
Sure. Microsoft should be there. It should be there. Amazon's going to be there. Amazon's going to be there because of the movement of goods. Absolutely. They need free delivery. How can they get closer to free delivery? Costing free. They price it free. No, not really. We pay for it, but never. We won't talk about that.
The partnership with GM I think it's like $2 billion at this point.
$2 billion. is that a big number? No, so yeah, it's an appropriate number. They need to be there. If you look at the information support that's going to have to be with these vehicles, they're going to be connected. Whether they're connected to each other is not. Anybody who puts these vehicles out there is going to watch over them. I mean, they're not just going to let them go out there and just roam like cats. No, I mean, they're going to watch over that. That needs a pipe. That needs that needs background computers supporting them and whatever, and clouds and so on and so forth, and communication. Talk about why we need the bandwidth. It's to support all that. Okay.
Even current new vehicles are watched over. So our big Savannah van, for example, if it's time for it to get an oil change, we get a little notice from GM saying time to get an oil change.
Absolutely, of course. And we as consumers are probably, we've got to watch out for the privacy issue. We have to watch out that it's not misused, but we're going to not be able to live without it. Okay.
I'm not sure consumers are that concerned about privacy, and these privacy issues can be dealt with. Bern Grush, and he has found ways of dealing with these privacy issues when it comes to all kinds of ways. You have the data, but the company doesn't have to have them or doesn't have to reveal it.
Right. And what some companies, one of the things in the data thing is that does all of it need to be harvested? I tell my students, and maybe I'm goofy, all right, but I say, one of the good things that the brain does is it forgets. Oh my goodness, we need optimal forgetting. Okay, we need optimal. You think about all the sensory inputs that go on, whatever nanoseconds that go up to a lot of how many of them, God, when she designed us to throw away much of that crap. Okay, let's get to what is important, for you to be happy, and so some of that needs to be put into this whole business privacy there, and there are ways to address it. And I think those that do it well, I guess we'll embrace and we'll be happy, and and they'll be happy, and we'll see. Everybody will be happy.
Also, in the new, go ahead, Diana.
Before I go, I just wanted to let you know that my office set up a new Center for Excellence for Highly Automated Safety Systems. We got a grant from Congress last year and more funds this year. And what this center does is it looks at safety problems with highly automated safety systems. And we have a director, Robert Heilman, and about 6 staff. So as well as working on GPS issues, we're going to be working on artificial intelligence, machine learning issues. So this was set up by Congress to be a resource to all the different modes of the Transportation Department, the FAA, the FTA, NHTSA, motor carriers. If they have questions about safety, they can go to this new center in the Office of Research and Technology. So that's one of our big achievements this past year, and I'm really proud of it. And Robert Heilman has a lot of experience, decades of experience, and he used to work at DOD also. So he has experience with these safety issues from the defense angle too.
Wonderful. Alan, from the newsletter, again, there were 2 pieces from the New York Times highlighted, one talking about the pandemic jeopardizing the long-term health of public transit systems, and the other on a proposed $10 billion overhaul of the Port Authority bus terminal.
Yeah, well, let's deal with the 10 billion. The Port Authority bus terminal needs a overhaul. The interesting thing about the buses from New Jersey, the constraining element is the XBL, the exclusive bus lane leading in the morning, which basically limits the buses to 750 buses per hour, and that limits the capacity. What is beautiful about the express bus service into Manhattan out of New Jersey is you can disperse your pickup points and then bring them in and have a really efficient ride into the city. It's a really good solution to a many-to-one transportation transportation problem. The throat on it is the XBL. Okay, and if you then even went to automation or something, what you'd like to do is, because of the dispersed nature of the demand, you'd like to have as many buses per hour for bringing these people, as opposed to making them wait, grouping them in there, and then moving them. And so, the number of vehicles per hour you'd like to be able to bring into New York is almost unbounded. You want it to be big. Okay, the constraint is the XBL 750. The interesting thing that I found out 25 years ago, in terms of what's the reason for that, is the variance in headway, the separation of buses, because of the human driver, just because of human driving variances. If you put a headway control system in there that basically maintains that separation, remove the variance. Remove much of the variance, you'll still have some. Then you can basically increase the capacity by 50%. If you go through all the numbers and da-da-da's. Okay, all of a sudden, my goodness, it turns out maybe 25 years ago it was a challenge to put a something that looks like eyesight, or what is in a number of cars, in intelligent cruise control in cars, which in Toyota in Subaru is standard equipment. You put that in the buses, all of a sudden you can put 50% more buses through the XBL. However, those buses have to be eaten by the bus terminal. So the bus terminal has to be designed, instead of, hey, we're just going to have because it's another problem that's causing this thing to be limited. We're only going to have to eat that many. And you look at the number that they're planning for there, they aren't planning for having these buses put the technology in there that, I know I'll be dead and gone, but is going to be there on the buses coming through there when that thing is operating. And I think they need to take a look at that again. Lou Pignataro and I put that out there 25 yees ago. Of course we didn't get funded to do it. I mean, whatever. I've always been out on the end of the asymptote of things, whatever. But anyway.
They also need to have smaller buses, because that means they can pick up people closer to their point where they want to go. And they shouldn't have them all go to the bus terminal. They need to have different pickup points within New York. They shouldn't be limited to the bus terminal. And the smaller the bus, the more flexible it can be.
Yeah, Diana, you're absolutely right. Yes, smaller buses, of course, absolutely.
More drop-off points.
And more drop-off points. Yeah, in most places that is true. Manhattan is the only place where maybe it's not completely true, because you have this wonderful subway system to distribute it from that point. Okay, and you have limited space, and it's really yes, absolutely, I agree.
And it plays well into the future with automated vehicles.
Well, at some point, the transit has not embraced automated vehicles, and it's a shame, because automated vehicles is transit. If somebody puts a service out there that, hey, I just walk a block and hop in and it takes me someplace and so on, that's transit, and it's public transit, because it doesn't care who I am. Doesn't care what color I am, doesn't care whatever it does. I just get in, just like a bus.
Unfortunately, that's not how transit is always defined. Transit is defined as something that's paid for by the public municipalities. So did you know, I was really surprised when I got to the department and found that Uber and Lyft were not counted as public transit. So if someone doesn't take a bus and instead moves to Uber or Lyft, or if someone doesn't take the subway and takes an Uber, that shows in the data that the use of public transit has gone down.
That's crazy. You're right. It's crazy. Right. Because
if someone takes an electric bike or one of these bikes on an electric scooter instead of the subway, that shows in the data use of transit's gone down. So when you read over the past, say, 5 years, use of transit's going down, one reason is because people are taking more of these other forms of transportation that are open to the public. Whereas in Commerce Department statistics, public transportation is defined as everything whether it's provided by the public sector or not.
Yeah, it should, and it but providing mobility, being a provider of mobility, it should be a sector. So that provider in some places maybe deserves public support and public subsidy. In other places, providing that openly to everybody, and if it can be done, with people paying and people making money, what's the difference? Who cares?
It has some real cost saving implications, because I'm sure both of you have seen these buses that go around between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. completely empty, or with maybe a few people in them. Well, say a municipality decides they're going to substitute a Via pool or a Lyft voucher for that bus. They can't pay for that out of their formula funds. They can pay for the bus, but they can't pay for these other things. So it gets in the way of reducing the costs of public transportation, the definitional aspects. So that's something really has to be looked at.
Absolutely. Okay, I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely. It's crazy.
States have to be given more flexibility with their funds, with the funds that they get from the Highway Trust Fund, to be able to use these other forms of what I see as public transit, like Uber or Lyft or electric scooter, rather than just putting them into the subways and buses. And that has a lot of cost sharing and cost reducing implications.
Yeah, the only caveat I throw on that is of course, the Uber and Lyft driver deserve to earn a living wage. They deserve to be able to feed their families. They deserve to be. That's why I tip them very well. Okay. Whatever, because they deserve it. Okay, they really do, and it makes it somewhat then expensive to move me around. If I then can replace that with a computer and a little gizmo and a little communications, whatever, they don't have my automated driving thing doesn't have a family to feed. Okay. I mean, it when you think about it, and I get the mobility, and most importantly, the people who can't afford to do that, who really need the mobility, who've been stuck on these buses that, my goodness, don't go where they go when they want to go. I mean, that's why I'm in the automated vehicle. That's why I do these things, because I think it would really improve those folks whose quality of life can be substantially improved by better mobility, as opposed to just having another way to get there. This allows them to get there. That's my focus, and that's that's a lot of people's focus.
That's been a key focus all along of the Smart Driving Car Summit. We want to remind people that that's continuing.
Yep.
Obviously, we've had to move to virtual this year, but it's continuing with live sessions every Thursday at noon Eastern time, and that's continuing through the middle of April. And we're off to a great start with that, Alan.
We're off to a great start, and absolutely, and we've been dealing with what can be done, what is done now, what can be done now with respect to the cars that and things that we buy now, and the way we get around now, and improving the safety of those. But really, to move then to the driverless realm, where we're really providing mobility for everybody, and again, we're gonna. My interest is to reach a focus to bring it to Trenton, or the Trentons of this world. Doesn't have to be Trenton. There are a bunch of Trentons where there are a lot of people, many with no cars in the household, many with just one car in the household. If you have one car in the household, what do the other 3 or 4 people do? Okay. And so on, that could be put in there to really improve their quality of life. Something that's available 24/7 that allows them maybe not to get to everywhere, but at least some places, and do it much better than the way we're able to do it now. Having to put a 53-foot bus out there to move somebody, at 10 p.m. to go, from Trenton to Capitol Health Center. Oh.
Well, there's also Uber Pool, Via.
They're absolutely
very, very efficient, low cost. They employ people at the same time. We have this technology now, and there's certainly in many ways less expensive than running one of these large buses out.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we can go to the buses, we can go to that, and then we can really go to the next one, and still have the Uber and Lyft drivers out there that, you know, Uber and Lyft could, you know, serve 1% of the trips at best. You know, we want to serve not one, we want to serve 2, 3, 10, 15, 20% of the trips, you know, really make a difference. But anyway, that's whatever. That's what this is a discussion.
Yes.
Don't know the future.
Well,
Okay.
thank you very, very much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. Is there any last question before I go? I want to thank
Well, we wanted to thank you for all of you, for all of your insight, all of your work, and being willing to come here and share it with us.
Absolutely. And I look forward to hearing Robert Hampshire when you have him on.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll get Robert. We'll see if Robert, you know, when you're inside the administration, we don't, you know, once constrained a little bit. And that's why we didn't reach out to you when you were inside. It's, you know, we don't want to put people in uncomfortable positions. Right. But anyway, this is a discussion. It's a great discussion that we had today, and we thank you. And again, we're just trying to do good.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all the weekly columns and podcasts that I get. I learn immeasurably from them. Thank you.
Thank you,
Diana.
Thank you.
Bye.
And thank you to our sponsor, the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF. The ticker symbol for the ETF is MOTO, and more information is available at motoetf.com. You can find us at smartdrivingcar.com. That's also the place to go for more information about the Smart Driving Car Summit, to register there or to maybe sponsor. Again, it's smartdrivingcar.com. Also, you can find us on Anchor FM, Spotify, TuneIn, Apple, Google, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Amazon Music these days, and more. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can ask your smart speaker to play us too. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with Alain Kornhauser. Thank you for listening or watching, and please stay safe.
And have a continued great weekend. Bye.